Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, I had a few people email me to try and resolve some technical problems, and I think that we've gone ahead and resolved some of those issues. So what I'm going to do is turn my camera on so you can actually see me. My name is Chris Schaefer. I'm a member of the MORIC Model Schools team, and we are running a series of webinars this week, next week, possibly longer, to try and help teachers in schools adjust to possibly some online learning solutions or some continuation of learning as we go through the next few weeks. So today's webinar is centered around the product Google Meet. So Google Meet is a video conferencing and video presentation tool. Basically what you can do is remotely meet up with groups of people. It allows you to have two-way conversations so that you could meet with students, parents, other school staff, have conversations via video or audio. This can be done on a variety of devices as long as you have an internet connection. And one of the nice parts about this is you can actually share your screen as well. So if you are looking for a solution for a continuation of learning time, this would be a great solution for actually trying to teach some type of content that can't just be simply delivered via a link to a website or a printed out document. How do I access Google Meet? There's a few ways you can get to a Meet. The first is just by typing in meet.google.com. If you aren't already aware, all of the Google tools, the core Google tools like Docs, Slides, Sheets, if you just type in the name of the tool, .google.com, it will take you to that tool's homepage. You can also get there through your Google App Launcher, which some people lovingly refer to as the waffle. So once you're logged into your Chrome browser, you see those 9 dots in the top corner. You can click there and you can select the Google Meet icon. Another way to get into a Google Meet session is through Google Calendar invitation, and I will show what that looks like. But if you do add a meeting in Google Calendar, once Meet has been enabled by your Google admins in your district, there's an option when you're creating Google Calendar meetings to actually automatically generate a Google Meet session. So what that does is it not only creates your Google Calendar event so that you have something scheduled in the calendar, but it also goes out and schedules a meeting on Google Meet so that people can then just go to meet.google.com and see that they have a meeting scheduled at the time that you set the calendar invitation for. Finally, one of the ways we see used in schools most often is by posting the meeting URL or the Meet URL into another tool like Google Classroom, sending it via email or through some other tool that you're using to communicate with your community. So some considerations before we get too deep into this. The first thing is Google Meet is a tool that has to be enabled by a Google administrator within your district. Usually within a school district, that's like your tech coordinator or one of the lead technicians. But if you aren't sure who that is, I would start asking with maybe your building principal. They should know who you would need to talk to have this turned on. And before I move on from that, I think there was someone who mentioned in the chat before we started how to actually go ahead and do that, enable these settings. We actually have a video on the MORIC YouTube channel, which I will show you guys in a few minutes. It's actually the same channel you used to join this session, so moric.org/video. One of the videos on that is expanding access to Google Meet, and that is a brief 2.5 3 minute video that walks through the Google admin settings that are needed to be adjusted to allow access to Meet within a Google organization. Another consideration is this is a web-based tool. So for students or parents or anybody to join a Google Meet, they will need to have internet access. As we talk about continuity of education with students being homebound, it is a possibility for some of our students still that they don't have Wi-Fi at home. But one of the nice things about Google Meet is they do have apps for mobile phones as well. So you could put the app on a phone and join a meet via the app as well. The last set of considerations that I'd like to point out is that if you don't go ahead and remove access to the URL, which I'll show you how to do a couple different ways, the Meet room will stay active after your meeting ends. So some schools have noticed that a teacher has sent a calendar invitation out to students. They've joined the Google Meet session. The teacher has presented. They've gone through the whole presentation. And then when the meeting ends and the teacher disconnects and the students disconnect, they're able to click on that link after the fact and go back in and use like the chat features or to invite members from outside the organization. So I don't think this is something that should stop you from using the tool, but I think you should be careful how you're getting people into your Meet sessions so you can delete those URLs after the fact. So if you're inviting students, you may want to use the best practice of posting the URL for the Meet into Google Classroom rather than just inviting them through Google Calendar, where it will remain in their calendar as a link after the fact. So kind of a management technique, but something to definitely keep in mind. Some features of Google Meet. It's similar to what you're seeing here with me streaming this video to you. I'm presenting content and I also have my webcam from my laptop on. So I have an audio and video connection and I can also present my screen simultaneously. Meet works the same way. It also works across devices, like I said. So if you have mobile phones, tablets, laptops, desktops, it will let you connect on just about any of those devices. You can also, if students don't have a Chromebook or a laptop or at home for school use, they can just dial in via audio connection on the phone. So when you create a Meet session, it gives you a dial-in number and a PIN number, just like a WebEx or GoToMeeting would, and it allows students to dial in that way. Some advanced features that Google has enabled for educational domains throughout the end of this entire school year, so ending July 1st, is number one, they've expanded the participant limit. So normally it's 100 people can join a Google Meet session, but now they've expanded that so you can have up to 250 participants. So this could be an issue in like a large high school. If you teach, 8, 9 classes within a day, you have 8, 9 preps, and all of those classes have 30 students. Of course you're going to go over the 100-person limit with that, but you could then invite them all into the larger expanded space through July 1 for the remainder of this year. Another nice feature they've enabled for the rest of this year is that you can record your Meet sessions. I just checked this morning and I don't see it quite yet. They're still trying to roll the feature out to educational entities, but shortly you should begin seeing the ability within your Meet sessions to go ahead and record them. And that's nice because it records it right to your Google Drive, and that's now a video file that you can assign to your students in Google Classroom or send via email if you needed to. The last feature they've enabled through the end of this school year is that you can live stream an event. So I don't think classroom teachers would use this quite as much. It's certainly possible. The difference between a live stream event and like a traditional Google Meet is that a live stream event is not a two-way conversation. It's more of a static presentation. So like you're seeing with me today, I can't see or hear any of you via the connection. But a live stream allows someone to present information. So this would be more for your building or district administrators if they want to disseminate information with a video message or a presentation like what I'm doing here to the community through the end of this year. They can use Google Meet and stream the event out to the community that way. So creating events is very simple. When you're in Google Calendar and you create a Google Calendar invitation, this is the screen that you would see. So you can see that you're going to give a title to the event. You're going to set a date and a time for that event. And you're also able to set a location, add notifications, things like that. One of the options kind of in the middle of the screen you'll see now is a drop down that's titled Hangouts Meet. And the nice part about that drop down is it automatically created a Meet URL, so meet.google.com/ and then there's a 10-digit alphanumeric room code that's put in there. That's the URL that users would click on to then join that Meet session that's specifically tied to this Google Calendar event. Another thing that's really interesting about the integration between Google Calendar and Google Meet is down in the description of the event at the bottom of the screen, you do have the ability to attach documents. And this can be an attachment from your computer locally, or it could come from Google Drive. It's kind of just like attaching from within Google Classroom, how you have multiple sources to pull from. If you attach anything to this Google Calendar event, when you get into the Google Meet and you're actually having the session live, those attachments appear in the bottom corner, and I'll show you where that is in just a second. So if I wanted to, I could save this calendar event and it would create the calendar meeting in my Google Calendar, and it would create the Google Meet session, and I would then be able to take the URL and send that out to anybody. So I could email it, post it to Google Classroom, whatever service you're using to send information out you could use. You also have the ability on the right-hand side of the screen before you save this event to add guests. So here you could type in names of specific people, and you would then be inviting them as a guest to not only your Google Calendar invitation, but to that Hangouts Meet as well. So they would get in the Google Calendar the link to go to your event. One thing to note with the guest invitation, if you're inviting students this way, I would recommend down below where it says guest permissions to make sure you uncheck the invite others checkbox. That's actually turned on by default because Calendar is a tool that's meant to promote collaborative efforts. They have that turned on by default, so you may need to uncheck the invite others so they can't go and invite another student or anyone outside of the school into your event. When you do click save and you've invited people with the Google Calendar invitation, it's going to pop up these two windows. The first one on the left is, are you sure you want to send an invitation to this Google Calendar event? And then you'll click either dismiss or don't send or send, depending on if you want that invitation to go out or not. And the second message will appear if you're inviting someone that's outside of your organization. So this would be the case if, say, you're setting up a parent meeting via Google Meet and you put in their personal email address and click save on your event. It's going to pop this message up that says, this is a user that's outside of your school. Are you sure you want to send it? It's not going to stop you from sending it, but it just wants to double check that it's okay to invite that person. So let's go ahead and take a quick live view at what this looks like. So what I'm going to look at now is the Google Meet website. So this is meet.google.com. You'll see here on the home screen, this background image is just part of the site. I didn't set this. It's just basically every time you come here, it's a random image that Google puts in the background. So you can't customize it as far as I know. You can really quickly just click right in the middle of the screen where it says join or start a meeting. And if you do that, it opens up a window where you can then create a name or a nickname for your event. So I could call this like testing Google Meet. Or if someone had given you a meeting code via email or another messaging app, you could paste that code in and it would join you into that Google Meet session. I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And you'll see here, now that I've kind of set up my meeting, it recognizes on my computer that I have a camera, a front-facing camera on my laptop, and it activates that. It also notices that I have a microphone built into my my laptop as well, so it's activated that. And what it does is it allows me to start the meeting by clicking Join Now. I can also join and use a phone for audio, or I can actually start the meeting by presenting something. So instead of it just coming to the meeting home screen with me as a video, it would automatically start pushing out some content. I'm just going to click Join Now. And the meeting's going to launch. You'll notice the first screen that comes up is your join information. So now that I've created this kind of ad hoc meeting, I can copy this information and I could send that to somebody. So what I'm going to do is, in a separate window on my laptop, I'm going to go ahead and send that invitation to somebody and wait for them to join. While we're waiting for that, I could, at the bottom of this, click Add People, and I could go ahead and type in invitations, or I could click on the call button, and I could actually have the meeting go out and dial a phone number. So if I knew someone that needed to join by phone and I had their number, I could manually put their phone number in. So here you can see I've got my invitation was sent and received. This is Derek, my teammate at Model Schools. He has clicked the invitation, so he's joined our meet. You'll notice I closed out that window at the bottom, but you'll see if I click on the bottom left corner, I can open that meeting information back up if I need to. I also have the ability to look at the attachments. So this is where in the calendar invitation, if I had put attachments onto this event, if I pre-created it in Google Calendar, they would show up here and anybody that joins the meeting can open them. In the right-hand corner, you'll see that I have more options here. So I can change my layout if I want to. So if I click on that, I could make everybody show up on the side as a sidebar, or I could focus on just the speaker, the current speaker. So you have options for the layout. I also can turn on captions. So if you have anybody joining the meeting that has any special needs, you could turn on captions so that they could read the captions. Sometimes this is also a good tool to help your students focus on the content that you're presenting rather than being distracted by the tiles of video over on the right hand side. So that's an option as well. Also under more tools, I have some different settings and I can use my phone for audio if I need to. I also have the ability to go ahead and present now. So this would allow me to pull up something from my computer and present it within the meeting. I'm not going to do that now because I'm already probably pushing the limits of my wireless access with trying to join a meet and stream this out, so I'm not going to push this out, but you could present information from your computer. The last few options in the middle allow you to mute your microphone, to turn off your webcam, and then finally to disconnect from the call. So those are the options within a Meet window. This is kind of what it looks like. The only other area is the sidebar on the right. So if I click on the sidebar to open that up, you can see there's a chat and there's a people section. So I can click on different people to pin them onto the screen. I can also remove them. I can mute them if I'm the meeting owner. And just quickly, the chat. So I mentioned this previously. Users can, when you're in a Google Meet, use the chat. So this is a text-based chat. It's not actually something you can turn off. It's just part of the meeting. So a lot of teachers ask that. It's just something as kind of a best practice you'll have to monitor and keep an eye on. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect from this meeting. If you can bear with me a second. Bye, Derek. So I'm going to return to the home screen. I do want to quickly show you what it looks like to join a Google Meet session that was set up via Google Calendar rather than by an ad hoc meeting. So here is my Google Meet that I set up in Google Calendar. When I click on it, it looks just like the other session did, where I can set my preferences for muting my audio, turning off my camera. I can join by phone, but I'm going to go ahead and join now. You'll see this looks just like the other Meet did. It's the same exact technology driving the meeting. But now you'll notice in the bottom corner here, I did actually attach a document, which is actually the presentation for today's session. I attached that into this meeting, so that is there. And anybody that joined this meeting would be able to open that up because I set it to be viewable to anybody with a link, so they can open it up. So those are the two ways, and I'm just going to close this up. Sorry, turn my webcam down and close up this meeting. Oop, there we go. There we go. And return to the home screen. So that's the basics of joining and participating in a Google Meet. For you or a student, it doesn't matter who it is within your organization. They'll go to the meet.google.com or they'll click on the Google App Launcher at the top and click on Google Meet. And this is the page they'll see. Any scheduled meetings would list down the right, or they can join a meeting or start a meeting kind of on the fly or ad hoc. In the Google admin settings, there is the ability to limit who can start meetings, so they can make sure that students aren't able to go and join a Google Meet. I know that's a big concern for a lot of teachers and administrators, so that is a setting that can be restricted so that students aren't able to do that. I'm going to get back now to my presentation, and the last thing that I really want to go over with you guys for this demonstration of Google Meet is some ideas for you to use Google Meet within your classroom. So not only as a tool that you can just quickly ad hoc have a meeting with, and not just necessarily for right now, but moving forward over the next year or over the next few years, some different ideas that you can integrate this into your classroom with. So the first thing is, obviously we've talked about, you can use this as a virtual teaching tool. So if you have some difficult concepts that you weren't able to cover well in class that you want to give some additional resources for, you could do that via Meet. You could also do it for students that may have been out of class and you want to make sure that they have the same information that the students that were in class that day. You could set up a Google Meet and teach them the content, just like you did with the students in the classroom that day. Another big way that Meet is used is as a virtual office hours tool. So again, this can be for review. It can be for a time like now. Maybe your students need to just have an emotional check-in with you to make sure that things they're still progressing, that they're comfortable with the way that you're now delivering material to them, and that you can kind of fill in any gaps that they may be experiencing. I know in the chat, a lot of you seem to be mentioning that you wanted to have a tool to support your parents at home as they're trying to work with students with some of the content as well. This is definitely a tool that you could work with parents through as well. So you could have parents join a Google Meet, have any discussions that you need to help them understand how to present the material and how to work through problems with their students. You could also use Meet as a virtual field trip tool or a guest speaker tool. So you can have a meeting set up and you could email a field expert, or you could email a museum and a link to your Google Meet. They can join in and they could present to the students virtually anything that they may have presented in the past in a physical way. So I know a lot of schools out in the Syracuse area where I live like to visit the Museum of Science and Technology. I know in the past they've done virtual field trips, so that's just another way to connect with some of those kind of field experts or places that you would normally go in person. Another way you could use this is as a virtual book club or topic study. So I know, for example, my daughter, who is in 4th grade, was doing Battle of the Books. And now their meetings are kind of being pushed back because of the way scheduling is going. So they could actually run the book club through Google Meet, where students would be able to connect to each other remotely. They could present information, or if they're doing a topic study, they could build a presentation and use Meet as that presentation vehicle with the other students and with the teacher. Some schools have set up what's called the mystery meet, where you set up a meeting with another teacher in another part of the country or the world, and you do a little research on your local area, and when you connect with the other teacher in their class, you do a presentation as a class, and then they have a chance to ask some yes or no questions, and then they get to guess where you're from. So this is a vehicle that you could use to have that same experience. This is also a way that you could connect some small groups together. So if you have students working on presentations or research projects, they could use Google Meet to present that material to you. So if they were working on a presentation and you had a presentation coming up, now they could just present it virtually. And of course, one of the things that kind of gets overlooked sometimes is you do have the ability to take everything that you're doing professionally and collaborate with colleagues this way. So I know, for example, on the Model Schools team, we actually meet on Google Meet once in a while. Sometimes it's just the easiest way to meet up with your colleagues because of busy schedules and everything that's going on. So this is a vehicle you could use for that professional learning, or just as a quick, how do you handle X? So it's just a great way to meet up. A couple other resources, and what I'll do is this presentation, I'll make sure it gets emailed out to the group, so you'll all have this as clickable resources after the fact, so don't feel like you need to furiously write down any of these. Google has a YouTube series called EDU in 90, and basically what they do is in 90 seconds, their education team creates a video on a given topic, and they do have one that's specific to Hangouts Meet if you're interested. That is linked within the presentation. Google also has, if you haven't visited before, they have an entire G Suite Learning Center. This is where they do the certification, like level 1, 2, certified trainer. So they do certifications, but they also have just some great, easy to use and very easy to kind of specifically pick certain tools, some great learning materials. So I've linked here the Hangouts Meet section of the Learning Center, but feel free to check out any of the areas that you might be interested in. And finally, we do have the YouTube channel at MORIC that you guys are using today, the MORIC Communications channel. That's just moric.org/video, and we're going to be having more webinars. So today's was Google Meet. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about Google Docs. And then Friday we're actually going to have a presentation about Nearpod. So those are in my learning plan. Nearpod was just added this morning. So if you were looking prior to this morning for upcoming training that you may be interested in, Nearpod has now been added. So feel free to check that one out and sign up if you're interested. We're trying to keep these to about 30 minutes so that they're just kind of a quick hit, basic information on getting you started with these tools. But of course, any of your Model Schools coordinators are available to you for email or remote support if you need it, if these aren't enough to get you up and going. So that's pretty much it for today. What I'm going to do is turn off my webcam and my microphone, but I will hang out and I will jump into the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them there. But in the meantime, my contact information is up. Don't forget we have the moric.org/pd as our workshop calendar. So I anticipate we're going to be adding more of these webinar sessions to that calendar over the next few weeks. So make sure that you're checking that out to look for some topics that may be interesting to you. And again, our YouTube channel is linked there as well. So thank you for attending. And again, I'll watch for questions.